Greetings, my dear viewers. It is I, back once again with another Dungeons & Dragons character conversion. Oh, wait, this is character concept, not character conversion. Welcome back to Character Concept. Today's race is, of course, the Dwarf. Now, the Dwarves come in three different sub-races. The Hill Dwarf, the Mountain Dwarf, which is what we're normally used to, the Duergar, which are the Grey Dwarves, and then Eberron technically has their own sub-race, the Mark of Warding Dwarf. Now, technically speaking, there is another Dwarven race, the Derro. These are the I guess you could say they are the lost sibling of the Duergar. According to the lore of the Derro, these Duergar did not escape the grasp of the Mind Flayers, and, well, the Mind Flayer experiments went a little bit too far and basically made these guys insane. So you could technically make your own Derro just by using your flaw as one of the Derro madnesses you can find on the Derro madness table. Whichever one that is up to you. One other dwarf out there is the dwarf from the plane shift Kaladesh, which are pretty good. For backgrounds on the Dwarven race, I would suggest either the Clancrafter, the Sage, the Guild Artisan, the Archaeologist, the Gambler, the Outlander, or the Plaintiff. They all seem to be very fitting for a Dwarven character. And that actually gives us a broad selection to choose from. So, what classes would best fit the Dwarven race? Let's go ahead and get straight into it. Starting off with the Cleric, most of your Dwarvish characters would probably pick the domains of the Forge, War, Knowledge, Nature, or Zeal. For a Duergar, the domains of Death and Trickery are also good options. For a Paladin, most Dwarves would probably go with the Oath of Vengeance, since a lot of their lore is based around how their civilizations are attacked by one race or another. So an Oath of Vengeance would make sense. For the Duergar, an Oath of Conquest makes just as much sense, since some of their lore is based on taking over certain civilizations. Barbarians, for most of your Dwarves, you'll go with either the Ancestral Guardian, the Battlerager, the Zealot, or the Juggernaut. And a fun fact, the Battlerager Barbarian is a Dwarf subclass. It was created by the Dwarves and it actually means axe idiot, which is kind of funny. But it is a dwarf-specific subclass, so that would be what a lot of your Dwarven Barbarians might choose. If you're a Duergar, the Wild Magic and the Berserker paths would work just as well. Wild Magic, especially if you are going with more of the Derro build that I talked about earlier. For a Bard, because a lot of Dwarves will actually like to sing, Some dwarves are into the arts, not just mining and smithing. A lot of dwarves are actually into the arts, like sculptures or singing or painting or whatever. So a bard dwarf actually makes some form of sense. For most of your dwarves, the colleges of creation, valor, and lore would be actually pretty good. Especially the lore college, that would actually make the most sense, since a lot of dwarves like to sing about their history. For a Duergar bard, the College of Whispers might be another option you would like to choose. Alright, moving on to the Artificer. This is mostly for your dwarves from Kaladesh. But that does not mean that your other dwarf characters might not want to choose this. On the contrary, I would suggest that most dwarves have at least multi-class into an Artificer. For your Artificer specialists, I would suggest the Armorer, the Battlesmith, or the Forge Adept. Moving on to Ranger. Ranger is actually a half-decent class for the Dwarf. Well, I don't know exactly what subclasses most of the Dwarves would choose. For the Duergar or even a Derro character, a Gloomstalker Ranger would actually be a pretty good fit. Speaking of martial classes, let's talk about Fighter. For the Duergar, I would suggest the Psi Warrior, since they do have some history with psionic tampering. For the rest of your dwarves, or your Duergar, you never know, you might want a Duergar who is this martial archetype, the Rune Knight. I think it kind of makes sense since the dwarves are all into smithing, stonework. It just makes sense to me. Alright, for a rogue, not many dwarves would probably be rogues, but I do see the Duergar taking up a rogue subclass. Most importantly, the Solar Knife or the Mastermind archetypes. Now, for the Monk. For Duergar, I would suggest Chateau, but for any dwarf in general, dwarves love their ale. So having a monk who is of the Drunken Master archetype makes perfect sense, if not logical sense. Since the dwarves really love their ale, it is reasonable to say that a monk of the Drunken Master would be a dwarf. Now for wizard, I don't really see dwarves being wizards. But that's not going to stop any of you. So if you wanted to make a dwarf wizard, I would suggest going with the war magic, since they are all about their weapons, what they forge. So a war magic would make the most sense in my opinion. Now for a sorcerer dwarf, most of the time you might go with either the Stone or the Rune Child. But for Duergar is going to be interesting. The Aberrant Mind, the Wild Magic, and the Giant Soul, especially for the Duergar, since they have that ability to grow in size. I think it's like a large creature they're able to turn into, which I think is perfect. The wild magic is more for your Derro character, since they're a little crazy in the head. Let's finally go over the Druid. Now, the Circle of Spores would mostly make sense for someone like a Duergar or for a Hill Dwarf, but that's not to say the Mountain Dwarves would also go for the Circle of the Spore. But it's still a good subclass to choose, since the Dwarves may be in contact with mushrooms and other types of fungi. But the most prominent circle I would choose for a Dwarven character would be Circle of the Land, and that is because there's so much variety. For example, a Mountain Dwarf that is a Circle of the Land Druid would go for the mountains. For Hill Dwarf, the grasslands. And of course for the Underdark, the Duergar, or even the Derro. Well, I do hope you enjoyed, viewers, and I do apologize for V's behavior in the last episode. I'm not. Quiet, V! You're still in trouble for doing what you did. Not sorry. I apologize for his behavior. Apparently he wanted to post his own video, which I don't mind, but it would have been nice if he had asked me first, especially with the stunt he pulled. What? We're low on subscribers. That's not the point. You don't just ask if they would subscribe to the channel. Anyway, like I said to V, if you want to subscribe, you can, but you don't have to. We do have a subscriber goal. For when we get to 100 subscribers, I will be creating a boss monster. And when we get to other goals, it'll be other stuff. I don't exactly remember what. I think at 1 million subscribers, I was going to DM a campaign. I don't remember exactly. And apparently there was a like goal set on my Among Us video, courtesy of V. Not sorry. Again, if you want to like the video, that's cool. I thank you for that, but it's not entirely necessary. I'm not forcing anybody to do that. You want to do something, you can do it. Anyway, enough with my little rant. Until next time, my dear viewers, this has been Drehan, and I am offline.